Good evening, everybody. Okay, so my story is called Bread of Life. Whenever I have moved anywhere and have lived by myself, I have, to inaugurate my living by myself, I bake. And what I choose to bake is my mother's famous oatmeal bread. And it's a delightful recipe. It's basically like the warm hug of oatmeal in bread form. And it's a really great bread. It's enriched, it has butter, it has milk, and of course lots of oats and flour, right? It's a wonderful bread. And I make this for myself when I'm by myself and living by myself, to remind myself about home and my mom. And I make it for other people to share, right? And so that usually makes a good conversation, and of course food is always great with friends, and so that's something that I just do to make myself feel better, right? I didn't always think that my mother's oatmeal bread was great, though. When I was in elementary school, my mother was a teacher, and she thought the best kind of Christmas present for my elementary school teachers would be to bake this bread. But she would get up really early the last day before, winter break, and she would bake an oatmeal bread for each of my teachers, right? And I was completely embarrassed bringing in these like aluminum foil footballs to my teachers, and she wanted that this bread be made that day, that it be warm, and that I give them instructions. Well, I was just embarrassed, but I realized, now being a teacher myself, what a lovely gift that was, right? So this oatmeal bread has been very important for me. So this is a time where I made oatmeal bread when I was in my 20s, and I was living in England. I was studying at Oxford University, and what an opportunity for me to do that. First of all, when I got there, I spent about the first month of my time at Oxford just having a huge amount of imposter syndrome and wondering, how am I here? How am I here? I was in graduate school, and I thought they made a mistake. I need to revoke my admission. I don't belong here. And then all the work started to pile up, right? So it was just really getting up, going to the library, staying there for 8 hours, coming back home to my little room, and working some more. So it wasn't very glamorous, right? I was very lucky to be there. I was very fortunate. And I made oatmeal bread, of course, for myself and for my floor mates, and I was in a international housing, student housing. So every day when I would go to the library, I started to notice around, I would say October, November, it was starting to get colder outside, I would notice that there was this young man who was unhoused, and he would be sleeping right outside of our building. And in the morning, I would pass by him, he was sleeping. I would go do my stuff, I would come back to my building, and son of a gun, he would be there also sleeping. I mostly saw him sleeping. And every day would go just as that. Just see him. He was usually just in the same spot. Sometimes he would be awake, sometimes he wouldn't. And it was very awkward to me to think about how we were relatively the same age, in our 20s, and to think about how our lives could be switched. How easy it would be for me to be in his life situation and how easy it would be for him to be in mine, and what was the difference, and why did that happen, and how does it happen. So I started to think about these things, and I really took the whole kind of semester to think about these things, because I got this great idea in my head. I was going to bake him my mother's oatmeal bread recipe. I was going to do it. I was going to make him some bread. I was going to give it to him. I had no other plan other than that. I'm just going to do it. And then I kept on procrastinating. When am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? And I was, as you can see, I was very hesitant about it in the first place. But I thought, this is what I need to do, right? I don't have much. I'm a graduate student. I have zero money. But what I can do is bake bread for him. So it happens to be the day that I will go home for winter break. It's the morning that I have to get ready to go. And I figure I'm gonna get up really, really early, like my mom, bake this bread, wrap it in that aluminum foil football shape, and I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna leave the bread for him super early, and then I'm gonna go and get a bus to get the plane to go home, right? That's my plan. So I do that. I get up early, and it's like, I'm talking 5 a.m., I'm talking 5:30 a.m., right? So I figure I'm really safe because he's going to be asleep, right? We don't have to even have I don't even know what I'm gonna say anyway, if he is awake. So I get down there, I have my like suitcase and everything, and then I have this bread. And he is there lying, as he usually is, and I was like, yeah, he's asleep, great. So I just put the bread right aside of him, and then I start to silently wheel away as silently as I could, and then he got up and sat up, and he said, what are you doing? And I really don't even remember the words that came out of my mouth, but I think it was something like, oh, I see you a lot, I see you every, like, it was just all like vomiting from my mouth of trying to understand, like, what am I gonna say? I made some bread for you. It looks like you maybe would want some bread. It was terrible. It was terrible. I mean, I don't even know what I was saying. And then he looked at the bread, he looked at me, he called me something not very nice, which I'm not going to say. He's like, why would I want your bread? And I said, okay. And then I backed away, right? Now, I've had some time to process this. I was really, really devastated. Like, I was thinking about this like on the plane, like, but it's my mom's bread. Like, it's really good. And why wouldn't you want that? And it's like, it was a gesture of care, and you didn't want, like, I was really confused. And maybe a little naive as well, you know, that someone wouldn't want something that I had to give, right? So I didn't tell anyone when I came back for winter break. They didn't need to know. I've kept this for a while. But the more that I think about it and the more that I process it, I take two things from this experience. Besides the fact that I'm now a little bit more savvy about humans. But here's the first thing, is that the systemic problem of homelessness is not going to be solved by one person giving a loaf of bread to somebody else. And I was naive enough to think I could fix something here, right? So I make it a rule now that I really don't give to anybody that any individual. I support organizations who do a much better job at fighting systemic problems like homelessness and food insecurity. And anywhere that I've lived now, I support organizations that do that. I cook for Manna on Main Street when I lived in Lansdale. I support New Bethany now that I live here, because it's a huge problem. So that's the first thing I take away. But the second thing I take away is I'm not gonna stop making bread. But I realize that every time I make bread for someone who's having a housewarming or someone who's going through something, and when I make bread, I think about the intention as I'm kneading that bread, I think about them. It's still an act of care for me, but I really think about that kneading, right? That there is need there for me to show that I care. But it's really okay if that recipient doesn't need it. I've learned that that's okay. And it's gonna have to be okay, right? But it's really about, the needing. And yeah, that's my story. Thank you very much.
I'm standing there naked, except for a very tiny paper thong. And I'm shivering, even though it's the middle of May and I'm in Johnson City, Tennessee. I'm at my friend Ren's art studio. Ren stands in front of me, a sponge in one hand and a paint palette in the other. Kristen, are you ready? This might feel a little bit cold. I'm ready. Yeah, let's get started. She swirls the sponge into the pink paint and then dabs it onto my neck, down to my chest where my heart is pounding loudly. Ren stops. Are you doing okay? How is this for you? I'm fine, yeah. Please continue. It is a little cold though, you're right. Ren swirls that sponge in the paint and continues painting down my chest, my belly, my hips, all the way down to my feet. And then up the back side of my body, down both arms to my hands. And then she pauses again. I'm going to paint your face now and you'll need to close your eyes. Are you okay closing your eyes? Yeah, I'm fine, thanks. I close my eyes and then I feel Ren's gentle touch on my cheeks, my eyelids, and then I feel her step away. And when I open my eyes, she's holding an airbrush. Kristen, this is gonna feel really cold. Are you ready? Yeah, I'm ready. I close my eyes and Ren sprays the pink paint from my forehead down the entire front of my body to my feet, and then all the way back up the other side of my body. And again, I feel her step away, and I open my eyes, I glance in the mirror, and I look like a character from Avatar, except pink. And then Ren says, Kristen, tell me again what we're trying to create here today. I want to become a living canvas of kintsugi. It's the Japanese art where they mend broken pottery with glue and gold, and they illuminate the cracks. They don't hide them. I don't want to hide my wounds and scars anymore. I want to become art. And the thing I love most about kintsugi, they consider that mended vessel even more valuable and more worthy than it was when it first started out. I want to feel valuable and worthy. Ren nods her head. Oh, Kristen, we're gonna make you shine. Are there any particular spots you want me to focus on? I take a breath. I place my hands on my throat. Here, for the words I couldn't speak and for secrets that were held inside for far too long. And here, I place my hands on my heart. And here, I place my hands on the paper thong. Here, to reclaim my body. And Ren nods her head. Oh, Kristen, we're gonna make you so beautiful. I'm gonna start with your neck again, if that's all right. Sure. I feel the paintbrush on my skin as Ren paints the cracks in purple and black, the color of wounds and bruises. And I purposefully do not look in the mirror. I close my eyes and lean into that sensation of the paintbrush on my skin as memories swirl and some fragments return. A few tears fall, and I quickly dab them. I don't want to ruin the painting she's already done. And I take another breath in, and I just allow myself to feel the sensation. It takes a long time for Ren to paint all those cracks on my body. 2 hours. We take a pause and we sip some tea, and then Ren lifts a box off the table and she says, Kristen, this is real gold leaf. I inherited it from an artist friend of mine, and I've been saving it to use on a special project. I'd like to use it on you today. Ren, are you sure? Yes, I am sure, Kristen, I am sure. We lift the lid of the box, and there's the gold leaf, and it shimmers, and I reach out and touch it. It is so delicate. And then Ren says, we'll start with your neck again. I close my eyes as Ren dabs on the glue and then peels off a sheet of that gold leaf and presses it into my skin. Again, it's like a meditation, and I just lean into the whole process. And it takes about 2 more hours. When Ren is finished, she steps back. Oh, Kristen, you look so beautiful. Do you want to see yourself in the mirror? Yes, yes. And I turn. And I see myself in the full-length mirror. And there I am. It's Kintsugi come to life, and the light just shoots off of me. I feel so powerful. And then Ren's voice breaks me out of my reverie, and she says, Kristen, the photographer has just arrived. Now, it was one thing to bare myself nearly completely in front of Ren, an artist who happened to become a friend. But in front of a photographer, a stranger, a man. I took in a deep breath. I centered myself. I'm ready, let him in. And the photographer entered the space and began setting up all of his equipment. And then he asked what I was hoping to create with the photos. And I said, I want to show the journey from the wounded little me to the healing warrior me. He said, I think I've got it. Are you ready? And I said, I'm as ready as I'm ever gonna be. He said, step into the light. So I took a step into the light, and then I willed my body, curled down to the floor in the shape of a bowl. I heard the camera click and whir, and the photographer's voice as he said, this looks great on film. And I pulled myself up into standing. I stepped out in defiance, my hands in fist. And Ren began to clap. Kristen, Kristen, let out a battle cry like a warrior yelled. And even though it might seem odd that I felt awkward doing that, given that I was nearly naked and covered in body paint, it did feel a little bit awkward, but Ren encouraged me with clapping. I leaped up into the air and I landed, my legs akimbo, my arms bent, my hands in fists, and I let out a ha! It felt good. My voice bounced off of those brick walls. I am art. I am art. My wounds are art. I flung out my arms. I tossed back my head and said, I am not forever damaged. I am not broken. I am art. I am a warrior. I am Kintsugi.
Denise. Thank you, Kristen, for that beautiful story. And thank you for allowing me to be a part of this evening. I just want to say, before I get started, that if there is anyone here who has the very phobia that I am about to describe, and you are really triggered, please feel free to leave. Do whatever you need to do to take care of yourself. I will not take it personally. So with that disclaimer, yes, I will say this is a true story, and it is in 3 acts. Act 1. It is a summer day. I am 22 years old and I'm driving down the Massachusetts Turnpike. I'm in an old Volvo station wagon making the return trip from the recycling center where I've just gone and unloaded a month's worth of cans and bottles for my friends who I'm staying with in Hardwick, Massachusetts. I had recently graduated from college, and rather than immediately joining the workforce, I decided to take a couple months off and help Suzanne and Brayton at their communal homestead. Riding in the car with me was another friend of theirs named Leah. Leah and I had bonded in the last couple of weeks, sharing duties like cooking and cleaning and doing chores around the property. Leah and I had also established that neither one of us was fond of snakes. Suzanne and Brayton's wooded property had a few sunny spots where they grew their vegetables, and it seemed like every time you walked into those rows, 1 or 2 of these legless creatures scurried away to avoid getting stepped on. They scared the shit out of me and Leah too. And so that is why when I noticed something moving on the dashboard of the car, I knew that it was not just me that I had to worry about, but Leah as well. Leah as well. You know, it still amazes me that we had driven 10 miles to the recycling center and not noticed it. But there it was, laying fully stretched out right where the dashboard and the windshield come together, was a long, skinny garter snake. And as I am driving 70 miles an hour in the middle lane of a 3-lane highway, it began to wake up. Out loud, I began to say, "Oh my God, oh my God." And Leah, who does not see the snake, says, "What's the matter? What's going on?" And because I did not want to tell her what I was seeing, I said, "Leah, I'm going to pull the car over to the shoulder of the road, and as soon as the car is stopped, I want you to get out and run." And so, as soon as I could get the car safely to the shoulder of the road, I turned it off, flung the door open, and ran down the side of the highway like my life depended on it. Leah, who was running beside me after about 100 feet or so, says, "Why are we running? Is the car going to explode?" And I looked at her and said, "No, there's a snake in the car." And she said, "What?" I explained the situation, how I had seen it on the dashboard, how it must have been sleeping, and now that it was awake, we had to figure out how to get it out of the car. The 2 of us walked back, cars whooshing past us on the highway. Cautiously, we approached and opened the back doors of the car. There, below the back seat on the floor, was our little stowaway. Mercifully, it scooted right out when we prodded it with something from the trunk, and then with heart still pounding, adrenaline still coursing through my veins, we got back in the car and drove the rest of the way to Hardwick. Now, what I have not explained and what I have not shared with you thus far is that from an early age, I was terrified of snakes. In fact, my fear was a full-blown phobia. I could not look at pictures of them in magazines or on TV. I could not go in the reptile house at the zoo. The mere mention of the word was enough to send a shudder through my body and cause my heart to race. More than once in my life, I had run screaming from a place where I just thought there might be a snake. And my younger sister, who was afraid of spiders, mind you, liked to torture me by leaving pictures of king cobras on my bed. The dictionary definition of a phobia is a persistent, abnormal, and irrational fear of a specific thing or situation that compels one to avoid it, despite the awareness and reassurance that it is not dangerous. I knew enough to know that the picture of the snake in the magazine was not going to leap off the page and try to kill me, but my rational mind had no real say in the matter. I knew that the snakes in their aquariums at the zoo were not going to break the glass and come after me just because I had walked into the room, but irrationality is the name of the game here. That's why it's called a phobia. My terror made no sense even to me. Which brings me back to the Massachusetts Turnpike and driving down the highway with a live frigging snake on the dashboard. If you had asked me prior to this incident what my greatest fear in life was, I would have said being in a confined space with a live, free roaming snake. It was the stuff of actual nightmares for me. Never mind the fact that when it happened, it was a puny, skinny garter snake. As far as I was concerned, big or small, venomous or non-venomous, all snakes were the same. They were all dangerous and they all had murderous intent. But here's the thing. In the aftermath of my worst nightmare coming true, I found that my fear diminished. Somehow surviving the very thing that I thought would kill me had given me a new lease. I was definitely still scared of snakes, but my terror diminished and subsided. I could be a certain distance from one and not run away. It felt like a miracle, and I ended up being grateful that the incident on the highway had happened. Act 2. 18 years later, I am now 40 years old, and I'm having lunch with a friend at a restaurant in Kennett Square, PA. It just so happens that this restaurant is in the same small strip mall as a pet store. We come out of the restaurant, and as God is my witness, there is a man leaning against the building smoking a cigarette, and there is a large, 4-foot-long, tropical snake laying on the sidewalk right where people are walking back and forth to go to the shops. Stunned by the bizarreness of this scene, my friend Jose and I walk towards the smoking man to have a chat. It turns out he works at the pet store, was coming outside for a break, and just decided to bring one of the snakes along for some fresh air. He says, "You can pet him if you want, just don't touch his head." And Jose immediately squats down and begins to pet the body of this large reptile. I am fascinated by what I am seeing, but with my heart pounding, I'm keeping my distance. Jose continues to stroke the reptile, and we chat with the man for another 10 or 15 minutes. Just as we are getting ready to leave, I realize the significance of this opportunity. If I am ever going to touch a snake, this is my chance. It is now or never. Inwardly, I argue back and forth with myself for what seems like an eternity, and then decision made, I walk over quickly and with 2 fingers touch the back of the reptile and then back away. And for the first time, I feel how dry their skin is, how it's actually not slimy or slippery at all. And I cannot believe that I have done this. I am so proud of myself and happy. And again, I'm grateful that this opportunity just presented itself. Act 3. 4 years after I touched a large snake on a sidewalk in Kennett Square, I am meditating in my bedroom in the early morning. In the course of my meditation, I receive guidance in the form of 5 words. You need to hold one. And though it never said the word snake, I knew that that's what this command was telling me to do. You need to hold one. And my immediate inner reaction was, oh, hell no. Oh, hell no. A short while later, in the course of the same meditation, I then received this message. To the extent that you are held back in any one area of your life, you are held back in all areas of your life. And I knew that that was probably true, and I knew that that was probably the case for me, and still I said, no, thank you. But here's the thing. Over the course of the next few months, I repeatedly received the message, you need to hold one, when I was meditating. Over time, the message actually became louder and more insistent. Eventually, it wore me down. My higher power or inner wisdom, or whatever you want to call it, was not taking no for an answer. Finally, I gave in and said, okay, fine, I'll hold one. As luck would have it, I knew someone who had snakes. Out of the blue one day, I called Sue and said, do you hold your snakes? And she said, yeah, we do. The one is less feisty than the other. We hold him more often. And I said, would you mind if I came over one day and held him? I feel like it's time for me to overcome this phobia once and for all. And she said, no problem. And so on a sunny September day in 2014, I held Bob, the yellow corn snake, in my friend Sue's living room. I was terrified from the moment I set foot in her house. I questioned my sanity and could not believe I was actually going to do this. At one point, I had a silent panic attack and almost walked out, and the words, "This is a mistake," kept running through my head. Sue was the reason I stayed. She was so kind, so patient with me. And there was a point several hours in when I felt like I owed her for all the time that she had given me. I approached to where she was holding Bob. He was climbing all over her, using her body like a jungle gym around her arms and her shoulders and her waist. I got closer. I got closer. I got closer. Finally, I put my hand out like this, and Bob's body slid across the top of my hand. Tears burst forth from my eyes and streamed down my face. Over the course of the next half an hour, I gave more and more of myself to Bob, from the back of my hand to the palm of my hand, from my hand to my wrist, from my wrist to my arm, now both of my hands, now both of my arms, and then just me holding Bob. I have a picture of myself from that day that Sue took in her living room. I am beaming like you cannot believe, and I am holding a 3-foot yellow corn snake all by myself. What no one could have told me, and what I would not have believed, is that when I walked through that doorway of fear, when I cleared its threshold and got to the other side, there was joy. So much joy, a tidal wave of joy. When I left Sue's house that day, I was euphoric. Endorphins running through me like I had run a marathon or climbed Mount Everest or given birth. Bob, as far as I was concerned, was my new best friend, and I felt free. Shout it from the rooftops, free, sing praises and hallelujah, free, free at last.
Hi. As I passed by there, I heard someone saying, I told you age was the theme today. The story I'm about to tell, I swear I know it completely, but it may sound to you like hearsay evidence because I was just then born. When I was born, there were two things wrong with me, at least. One of them was I was a boy. My mother so wanted a girl. 7 children they had lost. 2 had survived. They were both disappointments because they were mere boys. My mother then said, and anytime she wanted to make me feel guilty, she would repeat this. She would say, Jayu, I said, you have to make do with God, what God gives you. Boys are inferior to girls, yes, but I will love this baby if it lives as though it is a girl. Now, I have very little time, therefore, this applause time will be added. Now, you would ask, being a very smart audience, you would ask, why did she say if it lives? Because that was the second thing wrong with me. There was a lump on my head, the size of a tennis ball, right here, no doubt stylishly arranged. And this was a small town hospital in the middle of South India, and the doctors took one look at the baby and said, are you kidding? They said, this is out of our scope. And you see, this was British Raj in India. And British were very enlightened empire builders. They didn't want to spoil their colonies by pampering them with things like modern medicine and all that. You see, they wanted us Indians to grow up strong and self-reliant and without modern medicine. And therefore, the doctor said, please take the baby home, take 2 aspirin and pray. And my parents took me home, but they were made of sterner stuff. They did 2 things. One, all South Indians believe in the efficacy of oil baths, meaning massage the whole body of the baby with oil, and then use the bark of a tree called shikekoi, which is like soap, and then pour hot water. I swear to you, I still remember the temperature. And this was supposed to cure common cold and cancer. South Indians believed in it. South Indians believe in it like environmentalists, like evolutionists believe in natural selection, like some people believe in virgin birth, and recently some people believe in alternative facts. Now, then, once we came home and the oil bath was done, the second thing that was done was the really special thing. Mother had her youngest sister, 20-year-old, who had come home to help out with the childbirth. Mother sat her sister down, placed the baby on her lap, and said, little sister, I must have committed so many sins in my past birth. I've lost so many of my children. Let me give this baby to you. the gods may favor you, and therefore this child may live. Remember, mother was very clever one. This was just symbolic. She was not giving away. She was just trying to con the god of death. And then things began to happen. On the third day, mother says she noticed the lump, the tennis ball, you remember, was slightly dimpling. She didn't dare to say anything about it because evil spirits lurk there and they have no other business except to reverse good luck. So she said nothing. But by the 5th day, it was visible. By the 10th day, the news had spread all over the village, and strangers and relatives alike would visit to see the little miracle. Not me. I was not the little miracle. I was just the chorus. The lump was the star and the diva. And it went on, and they say that by the 21st day, the lump had disappeared totally, and I'm glad to report to you, as you can see, it hasn't reappeared. Now, my last question is this. I, as the main character with no speaking lines, I have this question to ask. What did the trick? Is it the oil bath? Is it my aunt's good luck? Or is it my mother's rage at the injustice of what had been done and her defiance at these prowling spirits saying, "Thou shalt not take this baby or else"? I would vote for my mama. She was 4 feet 11, a petite lady, beautiful, but in this circumstance, watch out. She was not going to take any nonsense. And the proof of her prowess is, here I am, 76 plus. And my last request before the knell rings is, if you ever see a baby with a lump on the side of the head, please be kind to it. I'm kind of partial to it.